So this is the tweet that Sonny put out. This is pertaining to um, the uproar about the Japanese Hakira. I didn't know her. She's a Japanese lady wrestler, and a lot of young fans really worship the Japanese wrestling scene, and it seems like, and but it just so happens that she was a pro wrestler, or that pro wrestling was something that she did anyway. I don't know if she was a bit of a name or just someone that did a little bit of wrestling, but came to a point and she was, I think, just in her early 20s, which, a teen or a young person to commit suicide is so much harder, but she came to that point. And apparently there's something from her past, and maybe going back to when she was in school and was bullied, and I know from experience that things like that can stay with you more than you might care to admit, even into getting older in life. Um, but at the same time, coming from a time when that was something you dealt with, uh, you know, little kids would say, sticks and stones can break your bones, but names would never hurt me. And I know words can hurt, but you have to have a place where you don't give words that much power, things people say that much power. And if you read this from Sunny, and obviously, yeah, she's endured all kinds of bad press. You just don't have to say anything else. And she has gone a lot of places in life and had problems. A lot of people didn't, but never thought of doing that one thing, that ultimate act, that permanent solution to a temporary problem, which ultimately I've learned in my own life that that is really a selfish act. You look at people and you feel bad, and it's appropriate and it's right to do that. But families that have had that happen a lot of times at some point later in life, they look at a loved one that did it and they see that, that was selfish of them to do that. And if a person's at that place, really the only one they're thinking about is themselves. So, that's a point to make. It's a reality. And the social justice warrior and so forth, and the pseudo fans of wrestling that are really just hijacking something that's famous in pop culture to put their views and political ideas and so forth. Um, these aren't wrestling fans or sports fans in my book. Um, but her point about never giving someone that much power, everything she said here should be applauded in my book. Everything should be applauded, and she doesn't mention the young lady or say anything about her. So to me, this was entirely not much more. It was entirely a response not to the event or the young lady that committed suicide, but to the people that responded to her and to that event and everything on social media and wherever. Um, and I'm totally on board with things she said. And then she had to come back and explain that she didn't mention this girl's name or anything about what actually happened. Uh, it was about how she has dealt with uh, going through things that, like I said, with the name calling and things growing up, and then the even more vicious world where now we have internet, and as adults, and the internet or cyber bullying is kind of a childish way to phrase it in my book, but the harassment and things that can go on online. And obviously, like I said, she's had more of that than any of us care to have, and it's not tearing her down. She has problems, but she's always had problems, and I guarantee you those things don't exist because of what anyone said online. Um, it, it, I just frankly don't get the approach that a lot of people have now, and that's exactly what happens. That would just hit the nail on the head. Is you give people so much power over you, and so you get someone else jumping on to defend, all these people jumping on what Sonny said, which was a response to what other people said, and then something with this JD guy who has a podcast in which just most anyone could have a podcast and can say things. So for a pro wrestler to respond to someone, even though what he said about Alexa Bliss, yeah, if you want to put a line, then yeah, there's a line he went over, But people can say anything. You can't give them that power, and most anyone can have a podcast or make YouTube video. It doesn't mean you're anyone of any substance. It doesn't mean that you're not. But for a wrestler or someone in the public eye and to come out and to respond, could you imagine Ric Flair or an Arn Anderson, or in the other company Hulk Hogan, or a middle of the road Greg the Hammer, or Elizabeth on the female side, or Baby Doll, or old territory Jimmy Garvin and Sunshine, or anyone, just anyone really, in that day or in days before. Say that someone found a way to make a comment that managed to get out there in a sports section in a paper, and it managed to get circulated all over somehow, because they didn't have internet back then. But can you imagine one of those guys coming and responding and making a big issue, And of course, these things, they last for their 15 minutes and then they're gone. But then there's always that next one. So even though that one goes away, the whole thing continues, and the culture of it is, like I made a YouTube video about it just a while back, within the last month. The culture's so toxic, and I called it the wrestling culture, and it is, because it's about the wrestling they're talking about, but so many of them are not wrestling fans. Maybe they're popular culture fans, but they're just hijacking it for their own agenda. So as far as sports or wrestling, it has to do with that culture, but it's not even about wrestling. But people in wrestling are involved in it. So it's a toxic culture for sure. Just very toxic, and I don't have the answers. When will it end? What will wrestling become because of it? Will it get better? Will it just fade away? I don't know, but it's not good. It's not good.